Tonight, we talk about a couple of different things. We talk about yet another forward sign for the San Jose Sharks, building the Guy factory. We talk about some new sweaters, and we also take a look at division rival Los Angeles and Vegas Golden Knights. All that and more tonight on Teal Tinted Glasses. But as always, if you want to be part of the show, be sure to hit us up on all the social media. That way you will know what we think and when we are going live. If you want to help us on the YouTube specifically, the easiest thing you can do is leave us a like. If you want to be more complicated than that, throw us a comment and, be a part of the show. Super excited to do this. It is me. It is Mr. Hockey Jerk. It is Teal Tinted Glasses. Mr. Hockey Jerk, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am fantastic. The kids are back at school. It's that we had a little, I guess you guys are having like a super heat wave down there, but we had a little mild end of August heat wave that we almost broke because this summer's been kind of lame up here. And
Sure.
we have an air conditioner like that. You put the hoses in the window and keeps the living room cool. It never came out all summer, except for like at the end of August, like we had to fight not to put it in. Because we know like the second we put it in, the weather's going to be crap again. And it has cooled down significantly up here in Northern Ontario. But yeah, so it is that.
Yeah, it was interesting. So pretty much all of July and August, it was, at least here in the desert of Las Vegas, it was actually, one of the longest monsoon seasons on record, regularly humid and raining and cloudy. And it was kind of a interesting experience for me. This is my third summer living here and the first time I experienced it. But with the Western United States heat wave going on, I'm kind of looking, I'm like, well, this isn't all that different from, what it's been the last week or so is actually pretty common for Las Vegas summer. But then, I talked to, family and friends and people in the server who all live in Northern California, and they're going through what I'm going through here. And it's like, oh shit, we have the infrastructure for that here.
Right.
In Northern California, you don't. So, wild stories coming out of there. It was actually, yesterday I was on the phone with a friend in Las Vegas and San Jose, both 111 Fahrenheit. So,
yeah,
makes you think.
It's too hot for me, man. I mean, at least like for you guys, like it's like especially in Vegas, like it's more, other than monsoon season, obviously it's more of a dry heat, which is way less terrible than humidity. Humidity is the worst thing that has ever been invented, and I wish the person who invented humidity would be punished severely.
Yeah, when it was in Las Vegas, our humidity kind of hovers around between 5 and 12%, I would say, which is low, obviously. And during the monsoon season, we were regularly in the 40 to 60 range.
Oof.
Yeah,
that is crazy. Well, I mean, I know that people probably aren't here for our weather reporting skills.
Hey, we're talking about the Golden Knights tonight, and
that's
the Golden
true.
Knights play in Vegas.
That's true. That's a very, very good point. Bob Blastley in the chat just saying, hello there from hot California, 115 degrees yesterday. Yeah, I don't envy that, man. I don't envy. I don't envy at all. I don't want to do the math to figure out what that is in Celsius, which is how I do temperatures. But I'm sure it's a lot.
That's 46 Celsius.
There. Oh God, no, thank you. No, thank you. All right. Like I said in the opener, the Sharks added another guy to the Guy factory. We got Svechnikov, but not the good one, which is sad. Evgeny Svechnikov, 25 years old, 1 year, 2-way contract, making a decent chunk of change in the AHL, though. $750K in the NHL, $350K in the AHL. It's a nice little deal for him. I mean, I don't have a lot here. Like, to me, I'm like, okay, another, like, literally another guy in the guy factory.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a week ago with Jonah Gadjevich, where the
Yes,
Sharks,
not Noah Gadjevich, by the way.
the Sharks, they make a habit of taking care of their AHL guys, which is nice to see. If I'm being totally honest, this signing got a lot more conversation on social media than I thought it would. To be totally honest with you, I'm surprised that Svechnikov got another contract, to be totally honest with you. Like, he's been, if you ask me, I know there were some debates once upon a time, on whether or not he was a true, legit, BC kind of prospect, and obviously that's not gone anywhere. But I don't know that I've ever been truly hyped over what he has to bring to the table, and then so to see the Sharks bring him in, I'm kind of like, okay, so one of two things, he'll go to the Barracuda, and he's a really good AHL player, so he'll go to the Barracuda, and it'll be awesome, or it'll just be another out of place guy in the NHL.
He is 6'3", so that's important.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, I'm looking at the numbers here. I mean, like, he stuck most of the season with the Winnipeg Jets last year, where he played, and he had 7 goals, 12 assists. So, I mean, if you can get a guy who can, if he can be a fourth line guy, but again, like, I look at this lineup and I'm like, there's a lot of fourth line guys on this team.
That's all the Sharks have.
Right. Like, and I like, in a bubble, like, this signing, I wouldn't super bother me. And I think having another guy who's like a reliable hand in the AHL, that's not a bad thing either.
No.
I think, like, there's a lot of guys, like, I'm really excited to play on this Barracuda team, but at the same time, like, you do want to insulate them somewhat. And I think bringing in a guy like Svechnikov and having that role, if that's what the plan is, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely, like you said, he's definitely, his ceiling is a fourth line NHLer at this point, which is fine. You need those players, but I don't know. I'm much more fond of the fourth line wingers that the Sharks already have, and so to me, I would just plan for him to be on the Barracuda. I mean, that's what I would do. I think the Sharks honestly have 12 or 13 forwards who I would put ahead of him in the depth chart. And so I don't know. It's weird to me. If Barracuda is not the plan, it's just weird to me that it's like, I understand the bottom six has been bad the last 3 years, but you don't need to have like a full on competition for, a fourth line spot. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like the whole lineup is fourth liners.
It's I don't like I feel like the bottom six has like double the amount of players that you require for a bottom six.
Right.
And I guess the competition's going to be fascinating, but not really. Because it's like is the bottom six going to move the needle for the Sharks this year? I don't think so.
I mean, I definitely think it will be better than last 3 years.
Sure.
But that doesn't really mean anything if your top end talent isn't good enough to match that. And I don't know, the more I just look at all the bodies the Sharks have, it has me kind of nervous that maybe Eklund and Bordelot are not in the plans for the NHL. Cap Friendly has the Sharks holding 15 forwards right now, and that does not include either Eklund or Bordelot. Yeah. And so it's I don't know, if I had to put my GM hat on and kind of analyze the situation, it doesn't look to me like they're going to start in the NHL unless, and I think I talked about it last week, but I would be surprised if the Sharks were done, and turns out they weren't. I still kind of feel that way. I mean, I wonder about like Bonino, I wonder about Matt Nieto, like I do wonder about these guys, and so we'll see, but it's a very curious case with the Sharks right now, to say the least.
Yeah, I think, like, again, like, training camp's going to be fascinating. It's funny because, like, for as much as I spent the most of the summer just grumping about how bad this team's going to be, the closer we get, the more excited I get. I don't know why. Like, I don't think like the team is going to be good, but I mean, and maybe this is just like kind of just speaks to the state of the team, right? Where I'm like, what are they going to do with all this, with all these bottom six guys? And, you know, if that's what's fascinating me going into the season, that's probably not a great state of affairs, but I can't help it. Like I'm not going to lie. I'm getting, you know, as we draw closer to the season, these things are exciting me probably more than they should.
Well, it's like I said, like I said last week, like you have, a team that has been bad for the last 3 years. And I think we're in agreement they're going to be bad again this year.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just something about, your team and they're coming back. And I don't know. There's just something about it that's exciting. Like, I'm excited too. I don't know what I'm excited for,
right.
but I'm excited.
Like, I mean, I'm always excited for hockey to start, especially because like I'm like a one sport guy, right? Like I don't really watch other sports, so like
right.
None of this other, like the NFL starting soon doesn't excite me. Baseball doesn't excite me. So I mean, we were lucky we had the World Juniors kind of late into the summer, like we did, because it kind of whet my appetite for hockey a little bit. So it wasn't like the complete dry spell. But yeah, I think it's just nice to get the new season started, even if it's gonna bring a lot of pain.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, a little bit, like definitely a one sport kind of guy. Last couple of years I have gotten more into the NFL, but it is definitely hockey that does move the needle for me. And I know, like, usually that first month or 6 weeks of the season, like I'm really juiced on it. And so it's like I'm watching 1 to 2 games a day, Yeah. And then my fiance is like, oh, you want to do something? And I'm like, I guess, so that I am excited for, because like I'm like you, just even it doesn't even have to be the Sharks, just put the game on and I'm like, yeah, let's go rock on.
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier this week we had some just AJ in the chat bringing us Vegas odds makers project the points over under at 77.5. The Sharks finished last season with 77 points. I might take the under there, I'm not gonna lie. If I was a betting man, I might take the under, but I'm not, because I'm a coward.
And you're not allowed to do this, but I don't know. I kind of feel like they end up right where the over/under is set.
All right. So earlier this week, they came out with looks like a new sweater, like basically a whole new kit combination for the Sharks here. What did you make of the of these teal and white sweaters?
I think on their own, and shout out to Puck Guy for whipping up I'm
gonna show Puck Guy's mock-up in a second. This was the original leaked image of it, and I'll throw up Puck Guy's.
In a vacuum, I think the jerseys are actually quite nice. They're I mean, you always need to see them in person. Like mock-ups will only do so much for you. But I think the jerseys are decent. Where I'm completely uninterested in this is the kits. I mean, I think the teal pants are tacky. I think the teal helmets are tacky. I think the socks are boring.
Yeah.
I know that Sharks fans have kind of fallen out of love with, black jerseys and black uniforms and kits and all that kind of stuff, but like I feel like in order for the Sharks uniforms to really pop, it needs that black color in there to like break things up.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts too. Like I really like, I don't want to say I really like them. They're fine. Like I think that the sweaters, I like the idea. They're fine. They're different. I mean, obviously, like they're not a lot of people want them to go back, and I would include myself in that. To go back to the original sweaters full time. I don't mind the new logo. Like I think if you went back to the original sweaters with the new logo like that, it would be my super sweet spot. But I agree with you, like on the kit itself. Like I think the pants, it's too much teal. Like, and I like teal. I really, really like teal. But I don't know. I am not a fan of like just being completely tealed out. But like the sweaters though, like I don't mind them. Like I like the striping. I like I'm a big fan of like the circle fin logo. So any sweater that has those, I'm always gonna kind of go nuts for those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate these. Like, I don't know when the plan is to use them. I can't seem to. We have a lot of mixed like information on when we might see these actually be debuted. I don't know. But I don't hate them. Like, I don't know if I'd run out to buy one, but I don't hate them.
Yeah, like I said, they're not the worst I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, the Sharks have had worse sweaters.
Totally. And I just, at the same time, I just find myself asking why. You know what I mean? Like, what is so bad about what the Sharks have now? You know what I mean?
Well, that's because everyone has one. I mean, this is what you have. This is the game. You have to release new sweaters to make people buy new sweaters.
I understand that, but at the same time, and AJ, goddamn, I don't know how many times AJ's made this point. Like, if you're changing your jerseys every 7 years, like, you're not really creating an identity. You know, you're not really creating something that people will look at and they'll say, you know, oh yeah, that's the Sharks jersey. You know, I understand that it's a money grab, but you know, at the same time, if you're cycling things out every 7 years, I mean, you know, it's gonna get old real quick. And you, like you mentioned, you have a lot of people who they want the Sharks to go back to the original logo and the inaugural era jerseys and uniform kits. And if by doing this, that's more years down the road that they're not going back to what pretty much everybody wants.
Yeah.
And I understand, you know, you just look at it, and especially on the white one, you know, it's very obvious that these are inspired by the inaugural era jerseys.
Definitely.
With obviously a modern twist to it. And I don't know. I think everybody knew what they wanted, and this is not that, but I was not really interested in you know, the Sharks' current jerseys when they were unveiled in 2013, and now I think it's one of the best jerseys in the league right now. So you definitely need to see it in person. You need to see the actual physical thing. I mean, the fact that Puck Guy was able to make a very clear HD mock-up off of a leaked cell phone picture is impressive. Yeah, but it's still not enough to get a full vibe on the jersey.
Yeah. No, I really like Puck Guy's mock-up here. So definitely, like I said, kudos to him. Yeah, I mean, the chat seems pretty split on them. Poll says, you know, we have 62% saying yay, 38% saying nay, and like a lot of comments here. I'm not going to just like I'd be here throwing up comments in the chat for a few minutes here, but you know, but a lot of people echoing in the chat, you know, at least mentioning like at least there's no orange, which I'm on board with, you know, but a lot of people saying like, yeah, they wish that there was a little more contrast.
Right.
So we'll see.
And you've seen like, and I believe it was AJ who mentioned in the chat how a couple years ago, you know, Colorado completely, they dumped the black helmets and the gloves and the pants, and they went for blue. And you know, once upon a time, I thought that was one of the best. You know, Colorado's uniform kit was one of the best in the league, and going from black to blue, I think, has made it worse. And you know, the Golden Knights and the Predators doing the gold helmets, I think, is really tacky. Weirdly enough, I think the Kings like chrome helmets actually kind of works in a weird way, but you know,
they're all bad.
These like whatever you want to call it, these, you know, I know color rush is like an actual legit term, but whatever you want to call it, color blast or, you know, color explosion, whatever you want to say, like it's very obviously becoming a trend, and I don't know that I like it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so that is the hockey jerseys. All right, so I mean that concludes our Sharks news for this evening. Sorry,
have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Which brings us to you know, looking around the division again, and I basically with things kind of going to like an absolute drip feed now for news. Like, I mean, we could start grabbing stuff from all around the league, I guess, and trying to run with that. But I thought instead of doing that, and instead of having like a super short show, we'd kind of double up the divisional teams. So I thought, why not? You know, I think it's going to work really well for this show too, because last show we talked about the Vancouver Canucks, and we talked about how there's kind of like a blender of three teams, and now we kind of get to talk about the other two teams in that blender. The first being the Vegas Golden Knights, which we'll do first, and then the Los Angeles Kings. And yeah, so I just think that'll be, I thought that would make more sense instead. Otherwise, this show would be really, really short, I think.
So
And
before
I feel like we cheat people if we do short shows.
I agree with the long shows are definitely part of what makes us us. Before we get into the fun, there is some chatter in the chat about whether or not you got a haircut.
Oh, no. I just, my hair is finally long enough that I can tie it back a little bit. So it's just tied back. There's no haircut. It's still long. It's just long enough now that I can tie it back.
Do we have an ETA on the haircut, or are you all in?
Oh no, I've gone this far. I lasted through, like, for me, the thing about growing out your hair is, like, you have to accept that there's going to be a phase where you're just absolutely going to hate it for a little bit.
Sure.
And I'm past that point now. Like, so I've come this far. Like, now why would I cut it? Like, I finally get it to the point where I'm content with it.
So I think, because last year it was all about it was all about Martin Jones and
Correct.
his save percentage.
Yeah.
Where maybe you need to find a new one for this year. Like,
No, I like my hair.
40 goals for hurdle, like, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like
Why?
maybe you don't cut your hair until the Sharks win the Stanley Cup, like
maybe. But, like, right now I'm content, right? Like, I don't know. I like it. But yeah,
Sure.
Obviously, like, originally, like, obviously we were still kind of, like, coming out of COVID, we had, like, lockdowns going on. Like, when the bet was made, there were still lockdowns and stuff, right? And doing things like
Sure.
cutting your hair was a pain in the ass. So I'm like, well, whatever. Like, if I'm going to do this bet, I'm going to make it worthwhile, right? So I'm going to let my hair grow as long as it can get. And if I have to shave it, then it's going to have a lot more impact than if I just had, like, a normal haircut and then we shave my head. I mean, maybe it would be the same for, the end result. But I thought, whatever. Now I made it through the summer. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. There you have it.
All right. So do you want to talk about Vegas Golden Knights then?
Do I ever?
All right. So here's the situation with the Vegas Golden Knights. Current cap hit, $92,736,310 for those keeping track of the salary cap. That puts them over the cap by $10,236,310. Now, again, important to note that this is just Cap Friendly's current numbers. These aren't the final numbers. Vegas will figure it out. They have guys that they can put on the LTIR that will significantly eat into this cap number.
Yeah, worth mentioning that with Shea Weber, which reminder, in case you forgot that they acquired Shea Weber, with Shea Weber's contract and with Robin Lehner, that's going to allow them to exceed the cap by $13 million, just about. So, for mathematical purposes, they are under the cap. I should say they're not under the cap, but they're under their cap.
Correct. Correct.
So, however you want to slice that one up.
So obviously here's the subtractions, and oof. All right. So the guys' subtractions. Obviously Peter DeBoer got fired and his coaching staff is now gone.
Well deserved.
They gave Max Pacioretty away for nothing. Amazing asset management. They lost Matthias Manmark, Evgeny Nadonov, obviously, and Dylan Coughlin. Coming in, obviously, Bruce Cassidy will be taking over the coaching for the Vegas Golden Knights. They brought in Sakari Meninen, Phil Kessel, and Aiden Hill, which we talked about on the last show. Nick Hague is still without a contract, so they need to sort that out at some point. And obviously, like you said, Shea Weber, Robin Lehner, both on the IR. Nolan Patrick, I couldn't find any status for him, but I'm assuming he will be okay.
Yeah, I assume so. I believe the last I had heard was that he was going to be ready to go. So that's a body for them, and he's relatively cheap. So
yeah.
But I think, like, the first thing that stands out to me is, I know people are gonna, and I've seen it on Twitter, right, where people are saying, talking about Evgeny Dadonov and specifically just how, like, oh my God, you tried to trade him, and you got him back, and then he was the best player for you, and then you gave him away for Shea Weber's contract. And like I've seen all the words on it.
Yep.
I don't think it's stated enough how important it was getting Shea Weber's contract. I mean, like obviously in a perfect scenario, if you're trading Dodonov, you want to get something tangible for him, like a physical asset, whether that's a draft pick or that's a player that puts on your uniform.
Yeah.
But cap space is, and it's especially now with everything going on, kind of post-pandemic, even though the pandemic's not really over, like cap space is probably the biggest asset you can bring in for your team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and this team is a cap-wise, I mean, this team is a disaster. Like, I can't imagine giving away a guy like Max Pacioretty for futures.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like with the way, I mean, you look at their cap, like their, their depth chart, right? And like they made the big move for Jack Eichel, which I actually quite like that move. I think they need a player like him at the center ice position. But so you have Jack Eichel, you have Chandler Stevenson, who's been very good for Vegas since he's been there, and you have Nick Waugh, who came into his own as well, especially last year. So you've already got 3 solid centers right there. The thing that I'm just wondering is, how are you not looking at William Karlsson and being like, yeah, this is the guy that we need to give away for free? I mean, good player, don't get me wrong, but is he a $5.9 million player? I think the stats would tell you that he's not, considering every year he's been on Vegas, his total points have gone down every year. Yeah. And it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
That's the guy I would have given away for free.
But is that the guy that someone else takes for free?
I think the right team would. I mean, like I said, he's a good player.
He is good. No, like, don't get me wrong. I don't dislike William Karlsson. I agree. Like, I think his ticket's a little high.
Right, and he's a good player, and obviously him and Smith and Marchessault have been a very good line, but I just feel like having Karlsson on the books, like if they don't trade for Jack Eichel, then it's not a big deal.
Right.
But you have Eichel, and by keeping Karlsson, like if you ask me, you're boxing in Stevenson, you're boxing in Nick Waugh. Like it's not, I don't know, it just doesn't feel very conducive to development for me, or really like team building, And not team building like everybody be a best friend, but team building like actually building a team.
Right. I mean, I look at this team and like you know me, like I've always been high on this team. Maybe higher than I should have been last year. Sure. Like I really like guys like Robin Lehner, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel
he's an easy guy to root for.
He is. I think he is too. I like Jack Eichel. I know a lot of people don't like Jack Eichel has a lot of detractors. I don't. I think it's overblown. Like I don't look at Jack Eichel and be like, when you look at what happened to this team last season, like I know Jack Eichel's an easy guy to pick. Oh, well, he was in Buffalo and Buffalo was awful, and then he came to Vegas and Vegas missed the playoffs. Like science, right? But I think that's unfair.
I mean, especially like post, like obviously they acquired him and then he didn't play for 3 months, but like once he started playing games for them, like that remaining stretch of the season, I want to say it was, what was it? It was 34 games. Mm-hmm. He was their best player in those 34 games. And I don't know. I mean, like being especially as Sharks fans, like talking about Vegas is the one team where I feel like you have to tread lightly, otherwise you're going to get an earful.
I don't care.
No, I don't care either, but it's a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I feel like ever since, and there's been a lot said, and we're going to say a lot about Vegas's aggressive acquiring of star players, but I feel like, I don't know, because of maybe there's a little bit of warm and fuzzies towards that inaugural team. I kind of feel like players that play really well, especially in the case of Jack Eichel, as I said, he was their best player. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're the best player and the highest scoring player within a stretch, because, they had to give up somebody they liked to get to you, and it automatically, they turn on you just because you're not who was there year one. Eric Holla, you know what I mean? Like, and I've always, as much as, again, we've talked about it, as much as Vegas has been extremely, like, just flagrant with their acquiring of players, like, they've got some good players. And I don't know if you heard, but good players make teams good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, when I look at this team, like, I look at this forward group. Now, obviously, Mark Stone's health is in question as going into the season. Like, it sounds like he's going to miss camp. So I wonder if he's going to have a hard time maybe getting going when he finally gets into the lineup. And this is the thing that really... the guys over at Sinbin did a really good article after the end of the season when management came out and said, oh, well, injuries. And they're like... well, what are you talking about? Like, injuries were the plan. That was the plan. They were going to use the injuries to fudge all the cap and bring in Jack Eichel. Like, you can't use injuries as the plan and then cry injuries when you miss the playoffs. Like, that was the whole game plan.
Right.
And I thought it was such a well written article. Like, I really enjoyed it. And I think the Sinbin guys do pretty good work. I know they don't like Sharks fans and they don't like the Sharks very much and they say mean things about us sometimes, but I do think that they are pretty honest about covering that team.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And you know what? There's, especially at forward. I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I always look at, obviously we know what the goaltending is. You know, Robin Lehner he's not playing this year.
Right.
Like, he's having surgery on both his hips, which is insane
brutal.
at 31. Like,
yeah.
But, you know, and I've kind of said it all along, and I still believe it to be the case. But I think with the Golden Knights, as long as they have Pietrangelo, Martinez, and Theodore on defense, they can kind of figure out the rest.
Yeah.
You know, and they have White Cloud, who's good. Nick Hague will obviously, once they sort out the long-term injured reserve stuff, Nick Hague will sign. I'm not the biggest fan of Braden McNabb, but obviously he's played well there. So they've got guys who can fill in those.
He does fine for what his job is.
Sure, he's fine, but I don't know. And maybe Nick Hague grows into that player, but I've always felt like they could do better than Braden McNabb.
Yeah.
You know, because they kind of, I mean, you know, they have Zach Whitecloud, they have Ben Hutton, like I don't know, they kind of already have these guys. Even though McNabb is a bit more of a bruiser, which I understand. But for me, the big kind of key is the forwards, right? Because you know what you're going to get with goaltending, you know what you're going to get with defense, but forwards is the big one. I mean, as you said, Mark Stone kind of questionable for training camp. Supposedly he's going to be ready for opening night, so we'll see. You know, no more Max Pacioretty, obviously, who has the last pretty much since COVID has been a thing. I would argue Pacioretty's been their best player.
Yep.
And so that hurts. And, you know, I don't think people talk enough about Riley Smith coming back. Like, I think that was really important for him to come back. And he took the same deal that he was on previously. So he likes being there, clearly.
Yep.
So I don't think that's stated enough as to how important it is. But bringing in Phil Kessel, I thought that was really smart.
A good move. Yeah, that was super smart. Because
I mean,
at 1.5, like, I think there's no risk there. Like, we talked about this on the last show, but like, it's such a no risk thing, because like, even if Phil Kessel's washed at this point, which I don't think he is, like, you're still going to get enough goals out of him to make up the 1.5.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he had 52 points last year. Like, Vegas is going to need that. I mean, maybe, you know, I see a situation where he insulates right away, you know, on the Jack Eichel line. I could totally see that, especially Jack Eichel is a bit more of a goal-scoring center, and I think that works with Kessel, who's kind of transformed into a playmaking winger a little bit in his older age.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I honestly see that being a real fit, but you know, as I said, the big question mark for me is the forwards. I mean, where especially you do have Eichel and you are keeping Karlsson. So then, you know, what's the plan with Stevenson or Nick Waugh? Like, does one of them play wing? Like, does one of them get traded? Like, I don't see a scenario where Nick Waugh gets traded. He just signed a big contract, but I do
nothing
wonder.
In Vegas.
Right, obviously. But I just do wonder, between those two guys, Waugh and Stevenson, who've been very good for Vegas, how are they going to be affected by by Vegas holding on to William Karlsson? I mean, you know, Karlsson makes more money. Actually, funnily enough, Karlsson makes more money than both of them combined. And Waugh and Stevenson, they both outscored Carlson last year.
Yeah.
So I think if I were to put a, if I were to kind of get out a roster sheet and sort of to do a big red circle, it's William Karlsson, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like obviously you have like a lot of guys with trade clauses. So I think that's going to be like the thing with Vegas that I've always had issue with is just how, like, because they always have to get the shiniest toy on the market, regardless, like long-term repercussions be damned. And I think it's kind of sad. Like, obviously as a Sharks fan, I love it, but it's sad. This is a team that I think has severely cut into what should have been a pretty significant window of contention.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I agree.
And at significant cost too. Like, I think their reputation among other players in the league has to have taken a hit. Like, obviously, if you're a free agent and you're looking to sign a big contract, like, are you looking at Vegas and being like, yeah, it'll be nice for a year and then they'll trade me?
Right.
Right.
And especially, like, you just look at the guys that they've thrown overboard the last couple of years, right? I mean, Pacioretty, Evgeny Dadonov, Tuck, Peyton Krebs, Marc-Andre Fleury, Nate Schmidt, who was very popular in Vegas. Paul Stastny, I mean, they signed him to a decent deal, and he made it a third of the way through that.
Yeah.
They've really, I kind of feel like if you were to follow the breadcrumbs all the way back, I feel like this all starts with them acquiring Tomas Tatar. Like, that first season, obviously we all remember, they were they were like the Cinderella story out of nowhere, right? And all of the sudden, instead of, going from 1 million draft picks to 2 million draft picks, they actually were a good team and wanted to add. But, they gave up a boatload for Tomas Tatar, and I feel like since then it's just been a perpetual, like, sort of downward spiral where it feels like they're just, I don't know, they're just chasing something.
Yeah.
And I mean, they give up 1 million picks for Tatar, and then they give up Tatar and a bunch of stuff for Pacioretty, and then they give up Pacioretty for nothing, and then they same thing with Dadonov.
Yeah, I think for Tatar, didn't they give like up a first, second, and third round pick?
First, second, and third for Tatar. I mean, if you really want to follow the breadcrumbs.
Oh, I know. It's second, crazy. Like, that trade's obscene.
Yeah, first, second, third for Tatar. Then you turn around, Tatar, Suzuki, second for Pacioretty, and then you give up Pacioretty for nothing.
Yeah, like
that alone, that doesn't even factor in Dadonov or Nate Schmidt or Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, these are, like, especially with Marc-Andre Fleury, like, for some reason, they've, like, Pittsburgh gave them a second round pick to take Marc-Andre Fleury. So, like, they were ahead of the game. They got a good goalie and a draft pick. And then, I don't know, it just feels like all the good that they did their first couple of years, they've just completely undone it all. And it feels like it all goes back to Tatar, where since then they're just, I don't know, they're
super aggressive.
It feels like they're chasing a boulder that's rolling downhill, and they're just never going to catch it.
Yeah. And the thing with, like, Marc-Andre Fleury, like, not my favorite goalie. Like, I think there's been a ton of revisionist history on Marc-Andre Fleury over the last little bit.
There totally has been.
But at this, like, I think Marc-Andre Fleury, like, I understood it, right? Like, Marc-Andre Fleury not getting any younger. So at some point they had to tear that Band-Aid off. I know it wasn't a popular thing with the fans, and obviously with Robin Lehner being out getting double hip surgery, like, obviously in hindsight doesn't look like a fantastic move, but I think it made sense. Like, that move made a ton of sense to me. Like, I think they had Lehner penciled in as the guy that was going to be the guy going forward, and they made the move. And I think for that, like, I give them credit for making a bold move like that, because it wasn't popular at all. Right.
No, especially the fact that, like, the player that Vegas ended up getting in that trade, like, I'm pretty sure they put him on unconditional waivers, like, less than a month after the trade. And I think the player unfortunately retired recently due to health issues. So it's like, already it was like a bad trade for Vegas. And then now just because the player, I mean, they let the player go for free, it automatically becomes a total loss on that part.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad. So taking a look, because obviously, like we talked about, I think we just like hit on a big thing, right? Like obviously, when you keep the thing with the Golden Knights is that not only have they put themselves in quite a bind right now, but they have sold futures. And look at, I understand, like this was a team that I think last year thought they were going to be a Stanley Cup contender. And it
rightfully
didn't work out.
so.
And rightfully so. And I agree. I mean, like last year going into the season, I don't think I foolishly said, I mean, in hindsight, it looks dumb, but I said it's going to be the Vegas Golden Knights and everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that won't be the case this year. But so, I mean, obviously, like selling futures, you have to sell futures to win now. Like that's the thing. But I think the thing with the Golden Knights is that they've sold so much that I think they're going to be a good team in the Pacific, but they're not the juggernaut that they were a year ago, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you look at, I mean, it's not a terrible picture here. Like you got top prospects. You got like Brendan Brisson, Lucas Cormier, Caden Korzacek. Like I think those guys are still like, they still have good guys in their system. Like it's not completely bereft, but when you look again at the guys that they have sent out the door, like it's kind of sad. Looking at their draft picks, they got a decent amount of draft picks. I mean, they still have their first round pick this year, surprisingly. They have 2/3, one's Buffalo's, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh. Now, obviously, you can add more picks as the season goes on, but I don't think like they're in a terrible position draft pick wise. Like I'm kind of surprised that they have as much draft capital as they do.
Mm-hmm.
Going into this season, right? So it's to me like it's going to be fascinating how this season pans out, because I look at this team, I think their defense is among the best in the Pacific. Easily.
It's rock solid.
Yeah, like it's rock solid.
Like I said, Petro, Martinez, Theodore.
Yeah,
you got those three, and you can figure out the rest.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? McNabb, White Cloud, Hutton, Nick Hague, I would say, is the fourth of that kind of group.
I really like Nick Hague.
Me too, but like as long as you got the big three back there, like the rest will figure itself out. I think, at least for defense.
Yeah. Forward group, they should score goals. Is it going to be enough goals? That remains to be seen. But this team should score goals.
Right, and I think what will be interesting to see, and hopefully they learn their lesson from the Shipachyov disaster. But the player that they picked up from the KHL, Manninen, I'm very good in the KHL.
Yes,
the last 4 years, really good in the Swedish Hockey League as well, and the Liga. I mean, he's been a force for European hockey, and so I'm kind of horse-eyeing him a little bit as like, yeah, that's a guy who's going to get a look. If Mark Stone, I know he's pegged to be ready for opening night, but if he's not, that's kind of my number one contender to be like, all right, you're with Jack Eichel. Let's show us what you got.
Yeah, I think, and even if even if he starts in like Henderson,
right?
And then gets called up, like I think, yeah, I agree. That was a sneaky good signing for them. I mean, obviously, we all know where the hole is on this team. It's in goal.
Right.
Like, I like Logan Thompson, but again, I haven't seen enough of NHL Logan Thompson to be like, oh yeah, they're fine.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like Thompson too, but I just wonder if the sample size is big enough to kind of put him in there in the starting position. And I think that's evidenced by the Golden Knights acquiring Adin Hill. I mean, obviously they wanted more insurance, and I am still 50-50 on whether Larry Brossoit, A, is healthy, and B, even plays on this team. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting waived, to be totally honest with you. But, I think clearly Thompson is going to eventually be the guy there. At the very least, he's going to be the backup there. I'm not totally convinced he's there yet. Not for lack of skill or lack of numbers, but just a small sample size. I mean, he's played 20 NHL games over the last 2 years,
Yeah, I mean, I don't have I said this last week. Like, I'm not like huge on Adin Hill. I always thought Adin Hill should be the guy that was on the outs as far as going into the season, with the Sharks. So I'm not gonna suddenly be like, oh well, he's on the Golden Knights now, so he's gonna be great. Like I'm not sold that's the case.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, so I look at this team like, and which brings us to the question. We'll do the rankings after we talk about the Kings, but like, are they on the right path? It's hard to say because I think this is the one thing that I always bring up, right? Like everyone always gets mad about Hasso Plattner because he says nothing. Well, here's the argument for Hasso Plattner being quiet and saying nothing is Bill Foley.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's easy to jump on the management group, jump on Kelly McCrimmon and whatever, but like to me, I don't think those guys get to do anything without Bill Foley over their shoulder. Now maybe I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the fact that like obviously we know Hasselplattner's name because we are Sharks fans. We cover the Sharks. Obviously, we know Hasselplattner's name, but like, honestly, like there's very few there's very few non-Sharks teams
right.
that I know the owner's name. And
I know a few
cases,
like
yeah, I know a few, and it's in most cases it's the ones that kind of like to go into business for themselves a little bit.
For sure.
The Eugene Melnicks of the world.
Yeah.
The God, it's slipping my brain right now. Buffalo.
Pugula.
Yeah, Terry. The Pugulas like definitely likes to go into business
Jeremy
for himself
Jacobs.
a little bit. Jeremy Jacobs in Boston. Yeah, like you notice how the only non-Sharks owners we know. Yeah, it's because they make a habit of getting involved, and you need a good balance. Like obviously, the owner is paying for everything.
Absolutely,
like, you want them to give a shit about the product.
Definitely.
But if they want to be the general manager, then don't hire someone to be the general manager. Just do it yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of like my thing. So I just feel like I think at some point, like I think if Vegas somehow the bottom falls out again this year, like I feel like the management group is going to get fired. And I think again, when you look at how this team has mismanaged assets and everything, like probably justifiably so, but I just wonder if that solves the problem when you have an owner like Bill Foley who is maybe a little more active than you would like him to be.
Right.
So I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, are they on the right path? I don't think they're on the right path. I think that, and then watch, they're gonna go and win a cup this year and make me look like an idiot again because this is what this team does to me. Constantly makes me look dumb.
When I was reviewing our notes earlier today, and I was completely prepared to say that Vegas was not on the right path just because of everything that they've done the last 2 years. The trades they've made and how they've treated players and all that kind of stuff. But just like looking at the team that they have as it stands right now, they've got draft pick capital. They don't have a lot of prospects, but they've got some prospects. I'm not as down with saying they're not on the right path as I was 10 hours ago.
Yeah,
but I don't know that I'm ready to say that they are on the right path either. I feel like they're right at the fork. They're right at the fork, and I think depending on what happens, I think will determine where they're going. Because I mean, as a Sharks fan, I would love for them to keep throwing grenade after grenade onto this team. I would love it. But I feel like, especially with Pacioretty and with Evgeny Dadonov, I sort of get the impression that Vegas has maybe learned the lesson a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And, they can only get, pee-pee whacked so many times before they learn. And I think it seems to me like they've learned.
Yeah. And look at, the one thing that I really liked for them is not that I like as a Sharks fan, but what I like for them as a guy who talks about hockey. I think Bruce Cassidy is a hell of a hire.
Oh, huge. Like, by all accounts, when he became available, Vegas completely shifted on their plan for a head coach. So good on them, like you said, for going after, I would argue, the best candidate on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about the LA Kings, and then we'll kind of figure out where we're going to rank both of them, and I think that'll be fun too. So let's talk about the Los Angeles Kings. They made the playoffs last year. I think they surprised a lot of people with how well they did. I think we
Not
all thought
AJ.
that they were on the well, not AJ, but I think a lot of people thought they were on the come up. But again, I don't think everyone thought that the Golden Knights were going to fall apart like they did.
Right. I kind of felt like LA was like maybe a year early.
Yeah. Yeah, so the current cap hit for the LA Kings is $80,986,667. Projected cap space is 1.513333333 into oblivion. Again, those numbers are just cap friendly right now. They will change probably as the season approaches.
They got that's with them having 15 forwards on the roster.
Correct. So again, that number will change. A few subtractions, not again, like I was surprised. I'm glad we kind of combined these teams because the LA Kings really didn't do that much this summer. Dustin Brown retired. Andreas Athanasiou, Oli Mata, and Troy Stetcher are the guys that were subtracted. And coming in is Kevin Fiala, which I think was a good move for them. They do have a little bit of dead cap in. They still have Dion Phaneuf's cap hit 1.062 million for this season. Obviously, IR players. Drew Doughty should be good to go. Sean Walker should also be ready for camp, but he may need some extra time to recover. So again, like this team isn't a whole lot different than it was last year.
I mean, they're definitely better. I feel like I'm thinking about it now. I mean, with the exception of the Sharks, obviously, I feel like every team in the Pacific we've talked about up to this point, and the LA Kings are no different. If you sort of critique a team in three portions, forward, defense, goaltending, I feel like every team in the Pacific we've talked about to this point has 2 out of 3 covered. And then there's 1/3 where it's like, I'm not so sure. And for me, that's the LA Kings, right? Like, in goal, I mean, Quick stole the net back last year.
Yep.
So you think, okay, even if he regresses a little bit, he's still a good goalie. And they have Cal Peterson. I'm a big fan of Cal Peterson. And so I think you're solid there. The forwards, I mean, geez, I mean, they got a lot, and I like Adrian Kempe, but I was a little nervous about him. And they got a lot out of Adrian Kempe. They got a lot out of Trevor Moore. And Victor Arvidsson was hurt a lot of the year.
Yep.
So that offense was good last year, was not at full potential, and now you have Kevin Fiala coming in, which I'll be honest, I was a little, on tilt to see him go to LA because I didn't think LA paid nearly as much as they should have to acquire him. And so I think on forward, I think LA is completely deadly. And for me, we're going back to, the third, sort of breakdown. For me, it's the defense that's a total. It's not even a question mark. It's multiple question marks.
Yeah. I look at this blue line. This blue line is young. Obviously, like you're gonna have Drew Doughty back, which I think is gonna help it. He's a guy who can still eat a lot of minutes, and he can still put points up. Again, I'm curious to see, if Sean Walker, but again, is Sean Walker a 3-4 guy?
I think at best he's a middle pairing guy. I think you could probably say the same thing about Matt Roy.
Yeah.
And then they're decent. Like they're definitely guys who should be on the team. But then you go from there and it's like, okay, Sean Dursey, really good rookie year, but there's no guarantee he's going to keep doing that. Tobias Bjornfot, we'll see. Jordan Spence, we'll see. Mikey Anderson, we'll see. Alex Edler just won't go away.
No.
And so it's
I don't mind. I think Alex Edler was an interesting ad.
Definitely,
because I think they're young, right? So I think having a guy who's been around as long as Alex Edler.
Yeah, I like Alexander Edler as a third pairing defenseman for this team. I think that's actually quite nice for them. But I mean, Dursey, Bjornfot, Spence, like Mikey Anderson, like these are it, and they're young, like they're still
Hmm.
growing. So I feel weird, but saying this, but it's like it feels patchwork a little bit,
Yeah.
where it's just like we don't have anybody else, so we'll just put our young guys in, and especially Bjornfot and Spence, like they can go back down to the AHL, and I know Bjornfot played a good amount of games. He played 70 games last year. Spence playing 24. So obviously they were established NHLers, but I just wonder, like, I wonder if what one more defenseman would have done for this team. Like, I like them
Hmm.
picking up Kevin Fiala, but I wonder. I mean, they got Arvidsson. Trevor Moore emerged, Adrian Kempe emerged, Iafallo had a down year. I almost wonder if it would have made more sense to go after a defenseman instead of Kevin Fiala. As much as I like Fiala for this team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? Now, like, again, I really like this team. Like, I look at this team like future wise, and I think they're in such great shape, right? Like,
Totally.
Anze Kopitar, like, doesn't age, it feels like.
Accurate.
Because he's
He,
a
he just
zombie.
finds another. Yeah, he finds another level every year.
Like, I think, like, so you look at him, like, as long as, like, Anze Kopitar doesn't suddenly fall off a cliff, like, you could have worse guys that are getting onto the wrong side of 35,
Totally.
right?
And I feel like there's always, when players, once the first digit in their age turns into a 3, I feel like there's always a lot of panic that comes with that.
Sure.
But to your point, I mean, despite being 35, like there's been no sign of slowing down. He's been, with a couple exceptions, he's been healthy most of his career.
Hmm.
And yeah, like you said, I mean, if there was a guy, in the 30 plus age group that I was willing to kind of, hitch my wagon to, it's Anze Kopitar.
Hmm. Yeah. And so, I mean, I look at this, right? And I look at, and like, this team again, like, you look at prospects, right? And like, you've got guys that, in my opinion, like, I would consider graduated, right? Like, you've got your Quentin Byfield, who I think is on this team, and I think he's, so I don't really consider him a prospect, even though he's only 20 at this point. Like, but he's there. Like, I think
Arthur Kaliev.
yeah, other guys. So you look at that, but I mean, and it just, the list goes on and on and on, right? Like, Alex Turcotte is a guy that still, I think, people have high hopes for. Brant Clark's a player I love, just absolutely love. Helge Grans, Brock Faber, like this. Again, like, just the defense. They have a young blue line, and yet they have all these other deep, like, they're they've become Anaheim. Like, they've got all these just ridiculous blue line prospects, which I just, I think this team's going to be a lot of fun. But I look at this team and I don't know if last year's an aberration, and I wonder if this team takes a step back.
I don't think so. I mean, I mean the defense is more or less the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could see a situation where maybe the goaltending takes a step back, as I said.
Yeah.
If Jonathan Quick, because Jonathan Quick played, he was at a above average goalie last year. I mean, it was his best season in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So I think you could make a pretty convincing argument that he might come back down to earth a little bit.
For sure.
But Cal Peterson is right there,
Yep.
right? And on top of that, I was quite fond of their forward group last year. And you add Kevin Fiala to the mix, you're hoping that Kempe and Moore can build on what they've done. You're hoping that Iafallo and Arvidsson bounce back, and you're hoping for another good year out of Byfield and Kaliev and Kupari.
Yep.
And you want Gabe Vilardi to take a step. Like, there's just the forward group. Like, for me, there's so much positivity on the forward group. There's so much opportunity for growth, and there's so much just excitement.
Yeah.
Like, I do feel like, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable saying that they'll be better than last year. I would be surprised if they were worse. I think the forwards have gotten infinitely better. I think the defense is the same, which for this team is good. And yeah, maybe the goaltending's a bit tough, but I think they can mitigate any issues there. I was a little unsure as to what to say a couple weeks ago, but I feel much better, and we'll obviously get into it, much better about where I place, all these teams in the standings. I think if LA adds a defenseman, I think they're going to have a lot to say about, Edmonton, Calgary being the top three.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And like this is a team that, again, like you look at what they, you look at how they did in the regular season, and this is a team that took Edmonton. Did Edmonton or Toronto win the hypothetical cup? I don't know. I never heard.
Well, they played each other in the hypothetical cup final.
Right.
I think
I don't
think
know who the
depending
victor
on
was though. But Edmonton,
Yeah.
this is a team that brought the Edmonton Oilers to 7 games.
yeah,
Potential hypothetical cup winner.
right.
So,
And,
yeah, it's
and
hard.
it was not a fluke either. Like they were good in a lot of those games. I mean, game one in Edmonton, total shocker.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, it's I don't know. The more I look at this roster, it's hard for me to sleep on them.
It's just hard because like I look at them, right? Because I feel like I'm looking at them and I'm trying to think of that, like where I'm ranking them. And for me, I have the Vancouver Canucks in 4th, if I recall correctly.
What's funny is I know where I want to place the Canucks this week, and I'm really nervous that it's different from where I placed them last week.
Because to me, when I look at this is how I rank it, and it's not even like, and I know people are gonna think this is a slight on the Kings. I don't like the blue. Like I like the blue line, but I don't love the blue line.
Sure.
I like the goaltending, but I don't love the goaltending.
Sure.
Sophomore slumps are a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like when I'm ranking the middle things, and maybe it's because I just like dick riding the Golden Knights for some unknown reason, I go Golden Knights, Canucks, Kings, and it's not even a knock on the Kings. I just think the Golden Knights are going to be better. I think the Golden Knights are going to have a better year. Their goaltending, yes, is definitely a question mark, but I think they have the offense that they should be able to outscore their problems. And I think Bruce Cassidy is a hell of a coach.
So you and I obviously are very different on this debate. Because yes, sophomore slumps they're definitely a thing. But I mean, really, just looking at it for me, Arthur Kaliev is really the only sophomore slump candidate, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Everybody else was they were decent. They had a hand on the wheel, but
That's true.
Kaliev was a needle mover for them. He's and I think maybe Sean Dursey as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, Kempe's been around for a while, and he's finally broken through. Same with Trevor Moore. And if you're an LA Kings fan, you want more out of Victor Arvidsson.
Yeah.
You want more out of Alex Iafallo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get what you're saying, and I do agree. Kaliev and Dursey for sure, regression candidates. But between, I think there's also some bounce back candidates as well. Like I think Cal Peterson. I think Cal Peterson will bounce back.
Yeah, I hope so. He has to.
He has to.
Absolutely has to.
I think that the bounce back candidates and the building on their growth candidates, I think will mitigate the regression candidates.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, right? Like I think like these 3 teams, dart throws to me.
I felt that way a week ago. I'm not so sure now.
Well, then enlighten me. Tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, not that you're wrong per se.
I know,
but like I'm, and I think there's definitely some recency bias here. I think it's because we talked about Vegas today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I have a hard time putting Vegas above LA or Vancouver. I mean, the defense is good, as we talked about. They have the big 3 over there, but the forwards, huge project. The goaltending, God knows what's going to happen. Like, Vegas, I think, has a good team, and I think they have the potential to do well, but they're one injury away from completely crumbling, if you ask me.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And I think LA, especially at forward, LA and Vancouver, both at forward, I think could mitigate an injury, Vancouver, I think, has better goaltending than LA. I think the defense is probably about the same,
Mm-hmm.
but both LA and Vancouver's forwards, I think, are way better than Vegas.
Depth
And
wise.
Vancouver, they just extended JT Miller.
Mm-hmm.
They're by all accounts are close to extending Bo Horvat. Like that core is going to be together for a long time in Vancouver, and same in Los Angeles. And Vegas, I like what they're doing over there at forward, but it's a slippery slope if you ask me.
I agree, and maybe asking the Golden Knights to stay healthy is a big ask on my part. I feel like with the way things went last year,
Mm-hmm.
can things go that badly again? Like I feel like the wheels for the Golden Knights last year completely came off. And I'm thinking if you can keep at least 3 or 4 wheels on the cart, like you can lose a wheel. I just don't know if I don't know if it's wise to just assume that all 4 wheels are going to fall off again.
Sure, and I get that. The counter that I would make to that, and it's not so much about the wheels falling off, but like Vegas lost their best goal scorer, didn't replace him.
No, that's fair.
Their best goalie's on the shelf, and they haven't they've replaced the minutes, but jury's still out on whether they've replaced the impact.
Yeah, I think, and maybe, for me, I think the thing, because I had a really, I struggled with this, man. Because, again, I think things are going well in LA. I don't think that LA, even if the standings go the way I think it is, I don't think that's bad news for LA. Because I still think everything is going right for LA. And I think that Rob Blake has done a hell of a job. And I think, even if this season, if they miss the playoffs this season, it's not the end of the world because they're just going to get better.
I'll do you one better.
Mm-hmm.
If LA can acquire, if LA can pick up a really good defenseman,
yeah,
not anybody who's a world beater, but just somebody decent, Calgary picked up Mackenzie Weegar. Edmonton retained Brett Kulak. Somebody in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think LA could make the Alberta teams nervous.
Yeah,
I'm
not there.
It's definitely a bold take for sure, but I don't know. For me, the forwards are there, the goaltending is there, the defense just needs a little work.
Marty in the chat asking, who do you think has the better cupboard, LA or Anaheim? I think LA.
Is it a cop-out if I say both? No, I would say, and this might be a weird answer, I would say LA only because Anaheim's young talent, they're not in the cupboard, they're on the team.
Yeah.
Mason McTavish, he's 19. Troy
Mm-hmm.
Terry, he's 24, but he's kind of part of that young group. Trevor Zegras is only, I believe Trevor Zegras is 21 or 20. And they've got a lot of young, even, you got your other Max Comtois, who we talked about last week, Isaac Lundestrom, both guys are 23 years old. Their prospects, or what you would classify as a prospect, are on the roster already. Right. Where LA has more, they've got more backfill guys. They've got more guys waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I like LA's better, especially, and it's hard because when we talked about the Ducks earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I look at I look at the Ducks, right, and it's I have more faith in that team than Verbeek does as far as where they are in the rebuild. So that gives me pause. Whereas LA, I just look and it's just like I said, they have a disgusting blue line pipeline working right now, and that's not it. They've got Quentin Byfield and Alex Turcotte, who might be a 1-2 punch down the road. It's just they just have an embarrassment of riches in LA, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. There's an embarrassment of riches in Southern California. Let's be real.
There is, yeah, and and again, right? I don't think I'm not trying to discount what Anaheim has. I think Anaheim also has a really good prospect pool. I just think if I had to pick between the two, I'm taking LA.
No matter how you slice it, it's this is a rough time to be a Sharks fan.
It absolutely is. Yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting because so what was your final ranking? Sorry, you're going LA, Vancouver, Vegas.
Yes. So yeah,
Fascinating.
LA 3, Vancouver 4, Vegas 5. And I believe I said Vancouver 4 last week. I hope I
I
did.
think you did.
So we're still there. And then I believe, just for a callback, what did we 6, 7, 8? I think we said Anaheim. I think I said Anaheim, San Jose, Seattle, or Anaheim, Seattle, San Jose, or
I
maybe
have.
Seattle, Anaheim. See, this is what everybody's in fifth.
Everybody's in
Everybody's in
fifth.
fifth. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It changes from week to week,
It
because
really does.
last week I was like, yeah, Vegas is in third. You're not changing my mind. Now I'd be surprised if they go higher than fifth. It's a moving target.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think for me, the reason why I am high on Vegas is because I think last year everything that went wrong could go wrong, and
Sure.
I think the chance of that happening again, and I really like the thing that really put me over for them is I really like Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, it's an excellent point to make. Don't make a mistake about it. Like
Yeah.
that's you know the there's definitely some debate on as to whether how much a coach actually does, but I think it does help when you have one of the best coaches in the league. A guy who can get a lot out of players.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be very fascinating. I mean, we're obviously both very definitive with our rankings, but at the same time,
Well, it's a
I
blender though. Like I
that's what I was gonna say. Like, we
I
both
want to
still
be
agree it's a
definitive
blender.
because like the otherwise like what are we doing?
Right.
Like I
But
feel
we
like if
both
we're gonna do
agree
this,
it's
we
a
have to
blender.
be definitive. But like those three teams could finish in any order, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like it's even though we came up with we obviously came up with an answer, but
Yeah,
it is a blender.
it's a blender. You brought it up earlier. The Canucks signing JT Miller to a 7-year, $8 million AV contract, has a no movement clause until 2025, 2027, 26, 27. And then the 15 team no trade from 27, 28 till its completion. I like this deal. The only thing I don't like about this deal, we were talking about this before we went on air, is I hate contracts that pay guys a lot of monies into their late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know what the answer is, right? Because you could make the counterclaim that, well, you have guys that get signed to contracts that pay them for what they might do, and they haven't actually done anything.
Right.
A lot of these guys, like obviously, like JT Miller has done things, so like he's earned the money. I don't know. I hate this. I hate the deals that end in like $8 million for someone who's gonna be like in their late 30s when the contract's over.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and I really really like JT Miller. He's probably one of my favorite players, to be totally honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with you. I think he's worth the money, full stop. I mean, shit, dude, he had 99 points this year.
Yep.
And last year, pretty much since he's been in Vancouver, funnily enough, his time in Vancouver has been the best time of his career. Who not many guys can say that.
Right.
And so I'm with you. I think he's earned the money. That said, he plays a very taxing game. I mean, he's regularly in triple digits for hits.
Mm-hmm.
He blocks a good amount of shots. He's taking face-offs, which face-offs, they may seem like not a big deal, but over time, guys hacking at you, whacking at you, battling, like that adds up. And I like the player. I think the player is worth the contract, but we get to 2027. Who's to say? I could see, because of how demanding, the game is for someone like JT Miller, all the stuff that he does beyond scoring points. It does have me curious as to how that's going to end up shaking out. And I know, I had mentioned it just a couple minutes ago, obviously Vancouver supposedly close on Bo Horvat as well. So that's obviously good for them. I mean, he's their captain and he's kind of the face of this era of the Canucks. But it does make you think. I mean, if JT Miller's at $8 million and Elias Pettersson is at, $7.25 million, like, is there money for JT Miller, or I'm sorry, Bo Horvat? Is there ice time for Bo Horvat? And, I think it's smart to bring JT Miller in, but I do wonder if there will be any corresponding moves along with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you do, if you want to hear our thoughts on the Vancouver Canucks more in depth, be sure to check out our last show where we talked about the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, I again, like I love the player.
Yeah,
I like the deal. I more often than not, like the guys that are signed to like these huge money deals, like at the end of their contracts, it's not great. Like if Vancouver turns around and surprises us all and wins a cup, then who cares, right? Like that's the argument that I always have for like the Sharks long-term deals, right? Like if they won a cup in 2016 or 29, do we give a shit? Probably. I mean, we still probably care because the team will still be bad, but you know what I mean?
At least there's something to show for it.
But there's something to show for it, right? It's like, well, yeah, it sucks, but that was the price we had to pay to win. And that's unfortunately, I think, for contracts like that is unfortunately the difference. And only one team ultimately every year wins the cup. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Because I agree. I wonder what the corresponding moves are going to be in Vancouver. Other than that, though, I think we have run out of things to talk about. Sad times.
It's weird. We're not even at 90 minutes yet.
I know. We need news. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, and make it quick, but I'm curious to know what you think about the Tim Stützle extension.
Oh, again, right? Like you're paying it's the big conundrum I think in hockey is like paying guys for things that they've already done and might not do going forward, like for the entire term of the contract. And then I think I really like Tim Stützle. I think he's probably going to be worth the money.
Definitely.
But it's but is he worth the money right now? Probably not.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I good player, gonna be worth it one day, but I mean, he's only played 2 seasons in the NHL and he had 58 points.
Yeah.
Like, that's good for a sophomore, but there's a lot more room to grow, and it's not guaranteed. And they're gonna need to pay DeBrincat, who's got arbitration rights.
Yeah,
and they signed Claude Giroux. Josh Norris got a contract. Brady Tkachuk got a contract. Yeah, Matthew Joseph got a contract. Not big bucks, but decent money. And I kind of said as a joke off air, but like, it makes me wonder if Ottawa knows something about the salary cap that we don't. You know what I mean? Like,
I think
Darden's
just happy that he's allowed to spend money, and he's just like someone. You know what I mean? It's like when you get to spend your own money and not your parents, and you start like just spending it frivolously because it's your money. I feel like that's pure Dorian right now.
And also, the Senators, they actually have they've got quite a bit of dead money on their hands as well. There's just some quick math. They've got about $5 million, just over $5 million in dead money, and most of that's not going to go away for 2 years. So it is kind of make you nervous, but at the same time, it'll work out. It looks like it may work out for them where, everybody will be making big bucks once the dead bucks are gone.
Yeah,
we'll see. I thought that was an interesting signing. I thought the Kirby Dach extension was stupid. Like,
yeah, we were talking about that off air.
Like, I'm a person like, I'm definitely pro player. Like, if you get your money, good for you. You know what I mean? But Kirby Dach's best season he had 26 points in 70 games. Like, that's barely better. Like, that's barely. And I know, difference being Kirby Dach, he's 21 years old.
Yep.
Third overall pick, plenty of room to grow, plenty of room to develop. But like, in 3 seasons, he's barely done more than like Dylan Gambrell, and you give him $3.5 million. Like, you want to give him a big contract. When you put it like that,
it does seem really bad.
Right. Like, you want to give him a big contract, like whatever. Like, Montreal is a crappy team. It ultimately doesn't matter. But I'm just having a hard time understanding why this was drawn out for so long.
Yeah. Like, I like Kirby Doc too, but I think, like, and again, right, you're paying him for hopefully what he's going to do. But I don't know, like, Montreal's just been such a head scratchy team for a while now.
Right. And there's been, you know what, and you know what,
And Jeffrey in the chat, like, my chat thing's not working, but Jeffrey in the chat saying sure, but what if Doc has a Tage Thompson breakout season? It's a gamble for sure, and I think that's what you're hoping
totally.
for, right?
And but even that, like, like, that's crazy too. Like, and I, you know, I threw it, I said it on Twitter, like, you know, this podcast likes Tage Thompson.
We do.
I don't know if we like him at 7.25.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it feels, and again, same thing. You know, Tage Thompson, he's 25, so, you know, it's not like you're giving a 30-year-old an 8-year deal. I understand that, but
Right.
you know, he, again, one season where he had 38 goals. Yep, $7.25 million a year for 8 years, 7 years. Like, you know, and you know, maybe Tage Thompson becomes a 100-point player, and we sound stupid, but at the same time, maybe Tage Thompson is the 14 points in 38 games player, and it doesn't look so good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the gamble, right? I mean, I obviously, like, I like Tage Thompson. I hope he does well. I hope that he definitely earns that money. But yeah, I mean, definitely it's a concern, right? And I think it's like, when you look at the Sharks, like, we have to figure out what they're gonna do with Timo Meier. You know,
I'm still, I don't know. I'm still expecting. I don't know. I know it's kind of like it's the gray cloud over everything, but I just don't see it weighing on fans and the organization as much as the Hurdle cloud did. You know, like, I think, I don't know. I'm still team sign him before the season starts to lock him in at a good number. But I wouldn't, like, if we get 10 games in and Myers got 10 points, like, I could see him be like, yeah, all right, do it, sign it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see it being. I'll put it to you this way: if it does end up being a drawn out process, I'll be surprised. Just especially because Hurdle signed long term. Like, if Hurdle had bailed, completely different story. But Hurdle's here, like, he's locked up long term. I feel like that makes it easier for Meier to do the same.
I agree, and I think I would agree more if the same people that signed Tomas Hurdle would be the same people that are going to sign Timo Meier. Like,
sure.
The regime change does, I think, muddy the waters a little bit.
I mean, whatever happens with Meier is gonna really determine where the Sharks are going.
Right, and then we said the same thing. Like, that's why I think it's similar to Hurdle, because I feel like that's what we said all last year about Hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, like, if Meier signs, then this is a quick turnaround, or at least it's attempted to be a quick turnaround.
Correct.
2 years, maybe 3.
Yeah,
but if Meier goes, this is a 5 to 7 year process.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And it all kind of hinges on Meier, and I do agree. I wonder if Mike Greer was in power last year, does Hurdle still get the contract offer? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, I think that is I think it's an incredible thought experiment, because I'm not sure again either. If that's the direction they go. I mean, Tomas Hurdle is not going to play on our 3/3 lines, so.
I mean, and the thing is, I don't know. And if he does, like, I don't know. I was thinking about this yesterday, and, like, if, let's just say Timo Meier does resign, it ends up being, like, for $8 million, which I think is probably fair for him. Mm-hmm. Like, can we at least agree that if he does sign for $8 million a year, it's a fair deal?
If Timo signs for $8 million, yeah,
because there's been a lot of, I don't know. And it always happens. Like, I shouldn't be surprised at this point, but, like, you know, I can't believe they're going to give Meier $8 million, you know, for over 8 years, and it's like, why?
I feel like if you're 25. Going to give, right, like that is the thing. That's the thing that gets me, right. Like, I understand that the Sharks have been burned by 8-year contracts, but the Sharks have been burned worse by the age of those people that when these contracts are coming up.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like Timo Meier is the guy that you give the money to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's shown to have chemistry with your best player. Why wouldn't you want to keep him around? Aside from Hurdle and Meyer, and like it's been a long time since the Sharks have had like a homegrown talent like stick around and go all the way through. Couture. Couture is obviously the most recent one, but even I think things are kind of rocky on that boat a little bit. And Pavelski left. Marlowe left.
Yep.
So, I think with Meyer here, there's a real opportunity. And I don't know. I just think 8 years at 25 years old, completely fair. $8 million, I think, is completely fair. And
I mean, obviously, but like as long as he can maintain like these point totals, right? Like if he goes back to 2020 Timo Meier, that's not.
Which I don't
think he's going to though. That's the thing, right?
And that's the thing. I just don't see a scenario where that happens, right? Yeah. His first 3 years, he grew every year really good, and then 1920, what happened? The Sharks were bad, and all kinds of coach was fired. Players leave, all that kind of stuff. But even then, people love to 49 points in 70 games, what a bum. People forget that Meyer was the Sharks MVP that year.
Yeah.
People forget that.
Ass.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then 2020, 2021, and dude, how many times have we talked about this?
Yeah.
What is, Meyer, I bitched a lot about Timo Meier that season. I thought his shot selection was atrocious. But the thing that we always went back to, his most consistent center was injured half the season. You can only do so much.
Yeah.
And I thought, considering the circumstances, it's a hub season, injured center, bad shot selection.
Yeah,
I thought Meyer did decent that year.
To Couture.
Right. And then now, if you ask, those two, I don't even want to say they're bad seasons. They're so-so seasons, if you ask me. Behind him, had a hell of a year this year. No reason to think he's not with Hurdle again this year.
Right.
I'm expecting 90 points. I'll be honest with you completely.
Yeah, I think 90's what you would like to see.
Yeah. I mean, sure. It just, and the point that you made about getting burned by 8-year contracts, I understand why a lot of Sharks fans are gun shy anytime someone's a free agent. I completely understand it. But at the same time, I feel like it has, being burned, I feel like it has made a lot of people blind to how good a player is. People were peeing their pajamas over Timo Meier last year, but now he's going to be a free agent. All of a sudden, well, he's not actually that good, and we shouldn't keep him. I just feel like anytime that free agent tag comes up, it's just people just want to forget how good the player was.
Yeah, and I feel like, and again, right, and maybe I don't say us personally are partially to blame, but maybe because obviously we talk about how unexcited we are for this team this year, how bad we think this team is going to be, and I think that people forget that you can have really good players on a bad team.
Exactly.
Right? I feel like it's fan bases either super overvalue their players or they completely undervalue, and it depends on how the team is doing. When a team is bad, then everyone has no value and everyone sucks and no one deserves any money, and when they're really good, then everyone's like, oh man, this guy, if we're gonna trade this guy, he should get us 6 first-round picks, and right.
Exactly. I don't know. I know, I get it. The Sharks have been bad the last 3 years. There's no reason to think that it's going to be any different this year. I get it. But, and maybe I'm in the minority on this, but to me, it makes sense. It's the smart move to build around Hurdle and build around Meyer. I understand Hurdle is 28, going to be 29. I understand that Meyer is 25, going to be 26. I get it. But to me, these are your guys. These are your horses. I know, Couture can say whatever he wants about loving being in San Jose.
Mhm.
If Burns is gone, I wouldn't be surprised if Couture is right behind him. As much as I like Couture the player and think he's still a really good player,
Mhm.
like I think that's the way. Like, I'm kind of the belief that the Sharks can have their cake and eat it too, where they do rebuild, but it's not a long drawn out process. I mean, I know people say the Sharks need to rebuild, they need to do this,
Yeah.
need to do that. That's what they've been doing the last 3 years. All they've
Yeah.
been doing is accumulating talent the last 3 years.
AO in the chat saying like if Meyer is that good, why wouldn't we trade now for assets to the rebuild? Why wouldn't why wouldn't Meyer go to a contender team instead? I think there's two answers to that question. One, there's a finite amount of money that's going to be available in the NHL, like on NHL teams. Like the cap's not making any significant bumps now. Can the Sharks, what do the Sharks have to do if they sign Meyer to a big contract? But is that money going to be out there if you trade him? The thing is, and this is the thing that I keep going back to, right? Is like, I think Timo Meier is good. I think if it depends on what you think the turnaround for this team is. And now I think management thinks that this is going to be a quicker turnaround than maybe a lot of us think. But I still think like if they believe that they can come out of this quicker, not right away, but quicker, then like, don't you want a guy like Timo Meier on the team when you turn that corner? Now, is that realistic? I don't know. Like, I don't know, like I really, and that's why I say like, it's fascinating because it's really going to give us an idea of how the Sharks, like management, how Mike Grier looks at this team. Like, I think Timo Meier's the canary in the coal mine.
Sure. And you know what? I mean, AJ and I talked about it like a year and a half ago. And, we both agreed, like, with the direction the Sharks are going, like, you have to, with respect to Hertl and Meier,
mm-hmm.
you have to keep both or you have to trade both. And I know the regime has changed. I understand that.
Yeah.
But Hertl's still here. At that point, I mean, you're kind of... I feel like you have to commit to Meier at this point. I mean, you don't... Like, there's a very obvious chemistry there. They obviously play well together. Like, to me, even if you're a rebuilding team, if you've got two guys who gel together, you don't break that up unless you're sending them both out the door.
Right. Or unless, look at if Timo doesn't, like, if for some reason Timo's like, well, I want out, then obviously you trade him, right? Like, if you can't get pen to paper, like if you don't have pen to paper by the trade deadline, then my opinion changes completely. Sure. If the trade deadline shows up and he is not signed yet, you don't let him sign a Q out and walk him out the door in free agency. You trade him now.
Yeah. And even if he takes which I've been saying it all along, I think him taking the QO is extremely unlikely.
Right, because I think he's going to either be signed or gone, and it won't matter.
Right, but that's the thing. Even if he takes the QO,
mm-hmm.
trade him. Because why? What do you mean?
Because if he signs his QO, you're stuck with him for the year.
Is it the whole year, or is it just?
So.
Okay, we'll have to look into that. But at the same time, that's. And we talked about it before, where I'm not really a fan of the way that Matthew Tkachuk went about things,
mm-hmm.
but at least Matthew Tkachuk was upfront and said, "Hey, I'm not signing here."
Yeah. I think and I think that changes again. So my opinion is like if you extend him, if the plan is to extend him, you extend him. But if he's not signed by the trade deadline, you absolutely move him.
Sure, that's fair. I mean, what it all boils down, I know there are a couple people in the chat have said, that Meier, which I don't know where this comes from, but have said that Meier seems driven by money. I don't know where that comes from, but
because he's European.
So is Hertl.
Just saying.
But even if that's the case, let's just say, like, what it boils down to is, how does he feel about San Jose, the city and the team? Does he love? Because here's the thing: if he wants to be on the Sharks and he loves the city of San Jose, what would you do? Would you have 10 million for 1 year and potentially burn a bridge and make yourself look like a shady character, or would you take 64 million over 8 years and build a good relationship and have stability?
Oh, that's been my argument the whole time. Like,
Yeah,
why
me too.
why have 10 million when you can have lots of millions? Like,
Exactly.
like I've always agreed with that, right? Like, but again, like I still think though, but if you don't have pen to paper, like you can't chance it at that point though, right? Like you can't let them walk to nothing.
Right. And it's weird because even though he is a restricted free agent, there are extenuating circumstances that have, kind of muddy that water a little bit,
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading in the chat. Like, I don't know Timo Meyer. Me and Timo Meyer are not buds. I don't know. Maybe he is just driven by cash. I don't know. I think we make a lot of assumptions about people we don't know.
But that's the thing. Nobody knows. Like, I've seen a couple people mention, like, oh, do you see how Timo Meyer presents himself on social media? It's like, yeah, doesn't like, unless he's got the money phone, I don't know that he likes money.
Sure, and even look at I think we all like the finer things in life? Absolutely. Do I think that because of that Timo Meyer has no loyalty to this team? I don't know Timo Meyer, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you how loyal he is to the team.
And again, if it seems like I'm picking on people, don't
no, I'm not picking on you.
I'm just talking. Like,
yep.
There's another person saying, Hurdle has loyalty from the Sharks taking care of him when his knee was out. Now, while I believe that to be true, unless you are like friends with Hurdle, I don't know that anybody knows that for absolute certainty.
I mean, the Sharks, like, but that's their job. Like, that's the whole thing, right? Like,
well, yeah, they're like, the law tells them to.
I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like I feel like we make a lot of assumptions about people that we don't know based on.
And that's the thing. If somebody, anybody, if they don't go on social media and every day tweet out, I love the Sharks, couldn't you question everybody on whether or not they love a team? Okay,
I don't like this team at all.
Yeah, okay, so whatever. So Timo Meyer hasn't posted a Sharks logo on his Instagram in 5 months. Does that mean he wants to be traded?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, again, maybe he does. Like, and I'm not saying, like, I'm not trying to discount anything. I'm just saying that I'm not going to sit here and tell you what Timo Meyer's thinking, because I don't know.
You don't know unless you're his family or his friend. And we and everybody in the chat are not that. Although, if you are friends with Timo Meyer, let us know.
Let us know. Leave us a comment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like, okay, so we've dragged this out long enough. I feel like I
don't know. We talked about Timo Meyer for 14 minutes.
I love me some Timo Meyer.
Yeah, me too.
But I feel like we're just gonna beat a dead horse at this point. Obviously, again, as always, man, appreciate you guys coming out and supporting us. Obviously, we're getting in September, so the season is fast approaching, but there is nothing going on. So the fact that you choose to come here and give us, an hour or so of your time, amazing. We always appreciate it. As always, if you want to help us out, the best way to help us out, leave us a like. If you want to get really froggy, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. Super, super froggy, hit the bell. And always, like I said, if you have something that you want to think that we discussed or missed a point or something else, leave us a comment. If there's something that I can reply to your comment, and then I will do my best to reply to your comment. Jerk, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I was expecting like a total shift of the landscape in the Pacific Division, going from last year to this coming year. But the more I think about it, and obviously now we've done, this is our fourth Pacific Division preview show. Mm-hmm. And the more that I'm like really thinking about everything, I think like next year's, or I should say this year's Pacific Division standings are going to be very, very similar to last year's. And that's not what I expected. I expected some people to drop. I expected some people to rise. I wasn't really expecting everything to stay the same, but my impression of the situation that is going to stay the same. And I think that makes things very interesting. I wonder if, I wonder if maybe a team like LA or Vegas or Vancouver, somebody in the blender, I wonder if maybe, last year there was a bit of we'll see, whereas this year it feels more like they kind of know where they're at. And I wonder if we see one of those three teams be more aggressive with making a move.
I mean, because you're the Golden Knights, and you can't.
Right. But like specifically with the LA Kings,
yeah.
It was like, obviously, last year for LA, it was found money, but they got to a point where they knew they were going to be a playoff team. And I was surprised that they didn't make a move to supplement their roster. And I wonder if they'll do something different this year. I wonder if Vancouver will do that as well. And maybe even Vegas,
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It is interesting. It does feel like the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm a little more froggy on the standings, but again, like I say that as I call it the blender. AJ in the chat saying that there's going to be a show this Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, so definitely make your way back to this channel for that. My final thoughts are, I think the Pacific's going to be a fascinating division. I'm really curious to see how it shakes out. I'm not very confident in my rankings, but I've given them. So again, if you want to tell me how crap my rankings are, and if you want to tell me that I need to just seriously just stop dick riding the Golden Knights, let me know in the comments, and I will try to break my dick riding addiction to the Golden Knights. I don't know why I do it. I don't know what it is, guys. I don't know what it is. It's a self-hate thing. I don't know. Again, so for this show, next week, I don't think we're going to do Wednesday because I think I work like until 9, which means I come home and I have like no time to eat and do this. So it's going to be either Tuesday or Thursday. We will let you know as we get closer to the time. We are going to be discussing the Alberta teams, and then I don't know what the hell we're going to do for the rest of the season, but we will figure it out. As always, again, thanks Hockey Jerk for being here. Thank you guys in the chat, and maybe we'll jump in the court in a little bit. But other than that, though, guys, again, super appreciate it. I have to do all the outro stuff. You know the drill. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on all the social media. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. And that's it. Thanks, guys.